Order of business this evening is the opening prayer and pledges of allegiance to the flags of the United States and the state of Texas, led by Councilmember Davis. If y'all join me in standing, please.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you've provided our community. We ask that you extend your protective hand over our first responders, keeping them safe as they serve those in need. Bless tonight's gathering, show us your wisdom, and guide the staff and council as we work to serve our residents. We pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. All right, for next thing on the agenda this evening, we have employee recognition with a presentation by EMS, recognizing teamwork of PD communication officers in locating a suicidal patient. Mr. Mabbitt.
Hi, Mayor, Council, and Dr. Brown. So 911 dispatchers have one of the most difficult jobs in public safety, at least in my opinion. Folks are very quick to criticize, not very many thank yous. I do want to make sure that they know how much they're appreciated and supported, especially by the EMS department. We're here tonight to recognize one of our dispatchers for their role in saving the life of one of our patients. I want to introduce Dave Yergin, who's going to talk about the call. He was on the call. So Dave is one of our paramedics.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank our dispatchers for assisting us in the morning of May 17th. They worked tirelessly to locate the subject of one of our EMS calls. A young man had accessed a digital suicide helpline and entered only his city, age, and first name. When he made it clear to the advisor on the helpline that he was engaging in self-harm and had taken a potentially lethal dose of his prescribed medication, the helpline advisor contacted Schertz Dispatch with very limited information. Armed with just that little bit of information, the dispatchers on duty at the time and the entire dispatch team made it their mission for about 30 minutes to track down the patient using every method possible, including working with the network security staff at Spectrum to locate the service address associated with his IP address. It turned out that the young man had taken an overdose level of his medication. When PD and EMS found him, he was lethargic, barely conscious, and in need of immediate medical attention. Without our dispatchers' tireless efforts to locate that young man, I have no doubt that he would have died in his upstairs bedroom with his parents asleep in the very same house, and that would have wrecked the family's life forever. He now has a second chance at life and time to get well and get the help he needs, thanks to the work of our dispatchers.
Wow, fantastic.
So they're a night shift crew, obviously due to the time of that. So Monica, the supervisor, graciously is here to represent them. It was Monica, Matt, Lisa Marie, and Sarah that all helped out with this particular incident and took the initiative to think outside the box because so frequently we get told no when we're not a police officer or a firefighter. When we ask, hey, can you check this for us? You don't necessarily get the same response as they would. So Spectrum stepped in, gave us what we needed, and it was a successful end.
Great, y'all. Thank you for having us. It was we called it, came very late in the shift. Number one concern was, are we going to get to this young man in time? And I'm very thankful for the resources that we have. I'm thankful for the team that I have. Everyone had a part. Everyone was on the phone. Everyone was making a contact that they needed to make. And it was successful. So I'm very happy. Gave the information to the guys in the field. They handled their part of it. And things worked out very well. So I don't know if I was glad it was us or glad it was us. Glad it done. Thank you.
Indeed, well, listen, on behalf of all of the residents of this city and all the staff and all of the city council here, thank you for that work. And I know that you do similar things every day, and it does go unsung and unappreciated very often. But talk to anybody who's called for help in this city, and they'll tell you a story of how they got it. And it's the work that you all do that makes that possible. I sleep very well at night knowing if something happens to me, you'll be there. So, thank you. Please pass along to the team our thanks. Of course, the natural inclination at this point would be to stop the meeting and end on that note, but we've got a little business to take care of. Next up, city events and announcements. First, announcements of upcoming city events. Who's got that one? Mr. James?
I've got that one. So again, to let everybody know what you can do for your part to help the community, tomorrow on Wednesday, June 12th, there's a blood drive that's occurring from 8 to noon just over in the community center parking lot. If you want, you can call 1410 tomorrow morning, try to schedule an appointment, or just show up. Reminder to council that Northeast Partnership meets on Thursday the 13th at 11:30. That's at Olympia Hills Golf and Conference Center. Tuesday, June 18th is a Chamber of Commerce luncheon at 11:30. And then we've got a bunch of parks and library events. Friday, June 21st, Music in the Park featuring Marcy Grace, 7 to 10 p.m., and that's at Pickerel Park on Friday. Saturday, the 22nd, the library's closed. They're having their 4th annual miniature golf fundraiser tee off for the library. That's from 10 to 6 p.m., $5 cash donation per person to raise money to support the library. That night, you can go down to Crescent Bend Nature Park at 12805 Schaefer Road. From 8 to 12, they're doing the Star Party. Telescopes will be provided by the San Antonio Astronomical Association. If you want, you can call Parks at extension 1850 for more information. Sunday, the 23rd, you can show back up at Crescent Bend at 7:30 a.m. for the birding walk. That's 7:30 to 10:30 a.m. Ask that folks bring their own binoculars, cameras, water, and snacks. And then we're back with council on June 25th here at 6 p.m.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Next, we have announcements and recognitions by the city manager. Dr. Brown?
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
And nothing from me this evening. So let's move on to hearing of residents. Do we have anybody sign up on the sheet? Just Mrs. Thompson, if you like.
Good evening, everyone, Mayor, City Council, everyone in the chambers, and our wonderful Deputy Secretary, Mrs. Wilkinson, who has just been an angel to me, so I just really wanted to acknowledge you regarding that today. And also, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Tim Brown for showing up to the meeting. I know you had to leave, and it was explained why you had to leave, and then Mr. Scagliola and Mrs. Hayward and Mr. Davis for all showing up. Really, the comments that I received were really, really amazing, and I don't know if they thank you personally, but they asked me to do so. And also, I'm here today I have a letter from the citizens, and it's to one of the council members. And unfortunately, I received it this weekend, and I was not able to get it in earlier when you were acknowledging people for things they had done. So, Mayor, if you see fit, I'm going to give it to Mrs. Wilkinson, and if you would like her to read it, you can direct her to do so. And then one other statement that I have, it's for the City Council. And, Mr. Mayor, I don't know how much it involves you, but to the City Council, and if it does involve you, then please adhere to the request of the citizens, is that the City Council would please do what they can to contact the owner of the golf course to possibly do the same thing for $1 a month that Dave Robinson was doing in conducting the golf course. And that is a way to get around so many different things and spending any extra money, because you would just take the money that you make and expend that on any hiring that you would do and so forth. So I was asked to ask you all if you all would take that into consideration, and maybe in 2 weeks you all can put that and address that to what may take place. And the citizens want you to know that they will not forget anything that you do to make this possibility happen and to keep our community golf course. So I want to thank you all for enduring with me. I know I've spoken a lot at these meetings. I don't mean to tire anyone of my speaking, but thank you so much for the opportunity to do so. And excuse me tonight for leaving early. We have another engagement that we have to go to, so I apologize in advance for that. And again, I'll give this to Mrs. Wilkinson. And thank you all so very much again. And all of you who weren't there, but you were there in spirit, we felt your spirit being there. So thank you again.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Next item that we have on the agenda this evening are the consent agenda items. There are 3 of those. First one is minutes, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 4, 2019, Resolution 19R69, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing approval of the Bear Metro 911 budget for fiscal year 2020, And item number 3, Resolution 19R70, a resolution by the City Council of Schertz for purchases up to $95,000 with WatchGuard video for vehicle and officer recording systems. Is there any of these that need to be pulled and considered individually? If not, is there a motion to approve the items on consent?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Edwards, a second from Mr. Davis. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
6 ayes and no nays, the motion carries. Next up, we have Resolution 19R49, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Management Advisory Group International Incorporated to conduct a classification and compensation study and other matters in connection therewith.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Dr. Brown. If you'll recall, I was here a couple months ago to talk to you with a workshop item about the class and comp study as well as a staffing study. And so tonight I have 2 items. The first is an award recommendation for a management advisory group to conduct the class and comp study. And if it's all right with you, I'm going to refer to the firm as MAG. It's what they refer to themselves as, and it's a little less of a mouthful. So as I go through this, I'm going to refer to the firm as MAG. As you know, Council approved $42,000 in this year's budget to conduct the city's second class and comp study. We released an RFP and received 3 proposals. After the initial evaluation, we did invite the highest ranked firm, which was identified as MAG, to present a short presentation to staff so that we could really understand their study methodologies, what they were proposing, and also offer an opportunity for staff to ask questions. And we invited folks from all across the city, all departments, all levels of employees to participate in the process. We had a really great participation rate, and they provided feedback as well. And so MAG is a national full-service HR consulting firm with extensive experience in class and comp projects, position descriptions, and human resources software. Principals of the firm have conducted over 500 similar studies in over 25 years of municipal consulting in 24 states, including Texas. So their proposed methodologies will follow a similar sequence as the city's first study, with some minor variances, but with a more critical sense for some of the city's long outstanding compensation issues, which are some of those issues that I talked to you all about before, to include certification and incentive pay, internal equity, and also job progression avenues. So we spoke during the interview process with MAG also about the importance of total compensation, because I know that was another discussion that we had during the workshop a couple of months ago. They reiterated that their processes will not only include review of the wages, but also of benefit offerings. They'll do a comparative analysis so that we're sure that we're getting an overall depiction of the city's total compensation and what we're offering currently, where we stand in the market in terms of total compensation. One of the other really neat things about this firm is that they have a proprietary software license to conduct this type of study, and so they're going to use it throughout the study, but then also they're going to license the city to use it at no additional cost after the study. So it'll allow us to maintain the structure that's established by the study. It'll be a great tool for HR to use to slot in new positions or even to reevaluate existing positions. So that's a really cool thing from an HR perspective. So based on the qualifications, experience, and the proposed study methodologies, staff recommends award to Management Advisory Group to conduct the class and comp study. Unfortunately, we were unable to get a representative from MAG here tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions from council?
I do have.
Mr. Edwards?
So we're going to actually include a manpower study with this as well, showing.
That will be a separate study and item number 2 that we'll talk about. Yes, sir.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? Questions? Dr. Scagliola?
Yeah, one of the problems I have is you're talking about the manpower study separate
Yes, sir.
from this. How tightly bound are those two efforts going to be?
Right.
Let me give you an example. You know, sometimes we have a problem with classifications. There are no specific job titles that are associated with some of these jobs. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm really not. But you know, if you reclassified an underwater basket weaver into a hydrological artisan, nobody needs an underwater basket weaver, but we do a lot with water. You know, so I'm wondering, how are we going to actually isolate and identify the specific jobs that are needed in this manpower study if we don't have them properly classified in this particular study?
So what I would say, sir, is that classification really speaks to the position description itself as well as compensation. But the staffing level study is going to look at workload, it's going to look at operations, performance metrics, those kinds of things. And it's going to be able to tell us where we need to assign resources, so including personnel. But the classification of a job really has to do with the compensation that we're going to pay for that position. So they're going to be two separate studies. Of course, again, what we'll get out of the staffing study is where resources are needed. So they're going to look at staffing levels. And again, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in this next item. And I don't know if I'm outside of the scope of this, but so that the staffing study is going to give us an indication of where we need to assign resources, including manpower. But again, this is looking at the specific positions in terms of compensation of that position.
Okay, and I saw the timeline. You had a Gantt chart. How long is this effort expected to last?
The class and comp is approximately a 100-day project.
Okay, and okay, I'll discuss the next one next. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else on this one? Mr. Davis.
We have an order that we're going to do these in. We're going to do the comp study first and then do the staffing study.
We will begin. We plan on doing them concurrently.
The only reason I ask is I would think that there's a good portion of the class and comp study. The class and comp study is going to be looking at the job descriptions and what each individual does. And I would think that that portion would have to get done first because that's kind of important to the staffing study or the manpower standard. If you've got a position in planning that does job A and B, we have to know that first so that when the manpower folks come in, they say, you're doing job A and B, and it's one thing to say because you're doing job A and B, you need to get compensated at this level, but the staffing study might come back in and say, because you're doing A and B, and with the workload of the city, we would recommend that we split that job, and you have one person doing A and one person doing B. I mean, I just don't see how they're going to be able to do a staffing study if you don't know who's in what position and what they're actually doing.
Yes, sir.
At the same time.
What I would say is the classification piece of the class and comp study, I believe, is only going to take about 30 days. The staffing study is going to be a 16-plus week study. So the first phase of that study is going to just include on-site visits and really for the firm to be able to come in, get an understanding of operations processes. They're going to be in the departments learning about the budget, workflow, those kinds of things. So it's very likely that we would have the classification piece complete before the staffing study got to that point.
So will you make the data available to the staffing study as we go through the class and comp study?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, and then at the end of those two studies, I mean, we're going to mesh the results together, or somehow make it a whole
We would do, so we're going to present, much like we did with the first study, we'll come with, I mean, we're assuming that we're behind the market class and comp-wise, and so we will come with options on what we can do to address those deficiencies and where we're lagging. Again, we're looking to get those results will be, or preliminary, or final, report will be done much sooner than the staffing study. That's going to be a much longer process. So my initial thought is that we would take those results, yes, and like I said, and couple them with the staffing study. But the results themselves will be two separate. Again, the point of the class and comp is to see where we are in terms of compensation per position. The staffing study is to see where do we need the resources, where are we behind, what can we do better, where can we realize efficiencies in the departments, in our operations. So there really are two different purposes to these studies, although the results will work in conjunction with each other.
All right. Anyone have an interest in making a motion on 19R49?
So move.
Second. Assume your motion is to approve.
Yes, sir.
Motion for Mr. Gutierrez, a second for Mr. Davis. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Got 6 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. Move on to item number 5, Resolution 19R48, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Matrix Consulting Group to conduct a staffing study and other matters in connection therewith. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. So the second item, like you said, is an award recommendation for Matrix Consulting Group to conduct the staffing study. I'm pleased to say that we have Alan Pennington, who's the vice president of Matrix, here with us tonight. And so he's going to be the expert who can field all of y'all's tough questions. But so followed a similar process. We released an RFP. We received 2 proposals. After the initial evaluation, we conducted a presentation with Matrix, and again, invited staff to participate in that, receive their feedback. Matrix has a highly experienced project team, including members who have previously served in local government and executive management positions, as well as career consultants with hundreds of studies under their belt. Their exclusive market and service focus is management, financial, staffing, and analysis of local government operations. So this is what they do. Since 2002, the Matrix project team has conducted over 75 organization-wide studies and over 1,200 studies of functional government areas, including San Antonio Fire, Austin Police, and Fort Worth Planning and Community Development. So their proposed methodologies include a comprehensive review of each department's background, staffing levels, budget size, workflows, and the use of information technology. They'll then conduct staff interviews to obtain operational specific data. And they'll conduct best practices and comparative assessment using other like-situated municipalities. And then they'll analyze the data, present the findings, and make recommendations on where resources should be reassigned, added, or reduced. And this will allow the city to create efficiencies and realize maximum potentials, optimizing service to our citizens. So again, based on their qualifications, experience, staff recommends the Matrix Consulting Group for award. Again, and I'm going to invite Mr. Pennington to come up and help with any questions that you may have.
Council, questions? Dr. Scagliola.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I figure you've done this study a time or two for different organizations, and you've probably dealt with the cities in the 40,000 category range. Past experiences, can you give us an indication of how much efficiencies you have identified in the past, and perhaps a ballpark figure for expected savings?
Sure. I'll start by saying every community is unique. At this point, we have no idea how efficiently you're operating, what your level of technology is, if you have a permitting system, if you have automated processes. So until we get in, I don't think it's really possible to estimate what the savings might be. If you are currently significantly understaffed in your operations, we may be recommending additional staff. It may be in the future. In those cases, we typically talk with our clients about what's the service level you want to establish, because when, as a policy, you establish a service level, and that dictates what the staffing is. And so we try to tie that together so that if you say we can only afford X number of staff, then we try to indicate here's a service level you should expect them to be able to achieve with the resources you've provided. So that you're messaging to the community a reasonable expectation and one that you can meet. We've had organizations where, especially a decade ago when times were tough, we came in and were asked to find $1 million in savings. And that had reduced services, elimination of services, those type of things. Other organizations we've worked with have come in and said, help us be the best of the best. We want to be the leader in our region. And in that case, we're looking at enhancement of services or additional staff. So it's not a direct answer, but I think it's the best answer I can give you now in fairness, and because every community is unique. We may find some areas where you're overstaffed and some where you're under, or areas where the work should be moved from one department to another. We look at everything from crew sizes to organizational structure, the number of managers and supervisors you have, and if they're well utilized, and number of frontline staff, et cetera.
I appreciate your candor. Thank you.
Mr. Edwards?
And I can tell you now, I really do believe that this is an organization that's going to say we want you to help us become the best that we can be. I mean, we want to become excellent in our service. I do have a question. Will you establish a timeline for the expectations of this work, of this actual study? Will these expectations be put in place? If you're saying we need to hire additional staff, when will you expect that?
So what the results of the study, it's about a 14 to 16 week project. So whenever we start from that point forward, we'll develop a sort of step-by-step project schedule that's more detailed than what's in the proposal with interim deliverables, because we have several interim deliverables that occur during that. And then when we present the final report and the implementation plan, likely we will do it in a short term and a long term. So there may be, you may be appropriately staffed in one area for the immediate term, but we are noticing something that says if this growth pattern continues, for example, the study we just did for Fort Worth, we did 2 concurrently, one of their police department, one of their codes department, which is a pretty broad department, including health and environmental, animal control, and others. We gave them an immediate need, a 5-year and a 10-year projection. That was what they were looking for. And we based that upon a variety of factors: population growth, projected workload changes, and that gave them a model that if things change, they grow faster or slower, workload growth takes off faster or slower than they anticipated, they could adjust that to fine-tune this as they move forward through the coming years.
So have those timelines and those parameters been given by staff already? Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Gutierrez.
On your findings, are they identified as proposed changes, suggested changes, or critical changes?
Yeah, we usually have a priority, a time frame, and who's responsible. Because there are some things that can only take place, for example, if it's a policy change, that's going to rest on your desk. If it's something that is within the city manager's control, we'll indicate that. Some will be at the departmental level. We try to indicate so that you can use it as a implementation plan, a work plan moving forward. And we'll tell you whether it should be short-term, long-term, or medium-term. And we'll work with staff to determine how specific you want that. Some clients want us to use, near-term, long-term. Others want us to say next year, 2 years, 5 years. We'll work with you to develop whatever works best for your organization.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Not, is there a motion to approve 19R48?
Motion to approve, sir. Second. Second.
Got a motion from Mr. Davis, second from Mr. Brown. Any other comments or questions from council? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 6 ayes, no nays. The motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is a roll call vote confirmation.
The first is consent.
items 1 through 3. Motion made by Councilmember Edwards, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Hayward voted yes. Members Davis, Gutierrez, Edwards, Scagliola, and Brown voted yes. Motion passed. Second is item 4, Resolution 19R49. Motion made by Councilmember Gutierrez, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Hayward voted yes. Council members Davis, Gutierrez, Edwards, Scagliola, and Brown voted yes. Motion passed. Item 5 is next. Description is Resolution 19R48. Councilmember Davis made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Brown. Mayor Pro Tem voted yes. Council members Davis, Gutierrez, Edwards, Scagliola, and Brown voted yes. Motion passed.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, we have a workshop discussion regarding the street preservation and maintenance program. An update. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here
Street
to talk
preservation
about
and maintenance, spam. Monty
Not the
Python,
tasty canned
Monty
fruit.
Python dancing in my head now. All right.
We're here tonight to kind of give you an update and to start talking about strategic planning for our street preservation maintenance or SPAM project. As you are aware, we've been working with council to try to develop a three-prong approach to street preservation. Routine maintenance, street preservation where we just need to put a new surfacing on like a chip seal or an overlay, and rehabilitation and reconstruction of those streets that really need more work than that. They've got drainage issues, failing pavement, and other things. We talk about desirable funding levels. Now, these numbers are big. I recognize that. These represent ideal numbers. If we had a perfect program in place, these are the numbers that we would try to shoot for. We try to shoot for about $200,000 in routine maintenance. That's our pothole repair, crack seal, the day-to-day stuff that Public Works does. Pavement preservation, the program to add a new surface onto the streets. That's about $1 million a year. Now, what that represents is getting to every street in our network that fits that category or that preservation scheme, once every 8 to 10 years. And then the rehab reconstruction area, about $4 million a year. And that's so we can chip away at that list. A road that's in that list, once we make that investment and rebuild it, it doesn't stay in that list anymore. Then it moves up in this slide to the pavement preservation area. So then it would be in the program in the future for just needing a new surface at regular intervals. It's like, this is a desirable. We know we're probably not going to achieve that. What we're actually going to get is going to depend year to year and will vary from year to year. Where are we at, or where are we going? We started putting together an initial construction project. Then we're looking into the future. Where do we need to go? Where should we go? And how do we put it together? That really fits the definition of a capital improvement plan. A lot of cities put these together. They use them. You look out 5 to 10 years typically. And it's a way to budget. It's a way to start programming things. If you have utility needs to happen, you need to kind of plan those in advance of your street work. It also provides an opportunity to present things to you and give you the opportunity to provide feedback to these project lists saying, well, no, we don't agree, John. We think you're wrong about this street. We want you to do this one instead. And it's a rolling list. It's a living document. Once it's done, it's not done. It's never finished. Every year it's revisited. You reprioritize things as you need to, and you add another year's worth of project to it. So every year we'd be coming back to you with a CIP list for streets and asking you to update that and approve adding another year's worth of projects to it. In the history of Schertz, we've really not had formal CIPs in quite some time or in the past. So this is kind of something new for the community. It's kind of like growing up. You know, you start out as a kid, you go to a teenager, then you come into an adulthood as you grow. The same thing can be said with cities. You know, when you start out small, or initial city, the smaller city I work for in Texas, for example, a lot of stuff was done on a handshake. But as the community continued to grow, as more needs arose, you start having to do these other things that at once, oh, big cities have to worry about that. We don't have to worry about that. Schertz is at the point, we got to start doing some of the big city stuff. CIPs can be used for a whole wide variety of projects, not just streets. All kinds of things, water, sewer, drainage. But they're often used for roadways or streets. When the cities organize their CIPs, excuse me, they often break them into subcategories where you have a project that is physically under construction, or you're heading to construction, ready to start turning dirt. In design, sometimes these projects take a while to actually get to construction, but that doesn't mean you wait to do anything on the project. You start and do what you can as soon as you can. And then future projects that you know need to be done, but they're later out in the CIP, so it gives you time to focus on your more immediate needs, but you're still planning, it's still out there to look towards the future, where you need to go next. Right now, we have a project underway. We've gone through design, trying to get it out the door to bid. We're shooting for approval of a construction contract for this July. This is our current SPAM status for the construction project, part of it. We've completed some pretty big repairs to Bainey Drive, to Maskey, and the Public Works Department has largely completed. There may be a few touch-up things that they have left to do, but what we call the prep work for the construction project that we're trying to let. Doing some of the minor base repair areas, but predominantly doing all the crack sealing before we put a new surface on. We've got the contract documents complete. Scott and I just had a meeting this afternoon to fine-tune those. We have to make a couple of edits and they're ready to go. Our construction plans are finally complete. Believe me, I was frustrated by the progress on some of that. Some of our simple projects as we got started got quickly complicated, and our design process drug on as a result. But our plans are done, 100% done. With any luck, we expect to start advertising for bids later this week on this project. It's a big project. Big project for any community. Very big for a community of our size. You've seen this map before. These are all the different areas that we're planning to address with this first project. This is kind of a listing. I know it's a busy slide. There's a lot of work involved there. We've got a variety of work. Some what I call rehabilitation in the North Cliff area, where we're taking the existing pavement that's out there, the pavement system, and going to pulverize it, add some cement, use that as a new base, and put a new surface on top of that. We have areas that we're going to chip seal. The roads are in pretty good shape. We want to make that investment now. And we also have areas where we're reconstructing roads. The roads need more than just a new surface on them. Where do we go in the future? Right now, this slide kind of represents the knowns that we know right now. It's $360,000 that's broken down. That's what we have in our current budget. That's what we expect to have next year based on the pre-budget workshop and the feedback we received from y'all to stay the course and move forward. And how it breaks down is we would spend about $40,000 of that, excuse me, based on our PCI data, to go out and crack seal. We would spend about $95,000 to do pothole repairs and everything throughout the city, stuff that Public Works normally does. About $200,000 of that would go towards the new top surface on roads. And then we always have other things that pop up. We need to replace a little section of curb here or do something with to correct a minor drainage problem there, and that's what the remainder goes to. As we start looking forward to other projects, where do we need to go next? We really try to be as objective as possible. And so we utilize our PCI data, and when we look at the different categories, one of the key ones is the preservation category. There's a specific range of PCI values that you're really shooting for there. Those streets are in relatively good shape, but we need to make the investment now before they drop into the next category, which is rehab or reconstruction, because it's much more costly to try to restore them at that point. It's 5 to 10 times more per square foot than it is in the preservation category. So by making that investment at that right point, we can actually save money in the long run versus letting the street deteriorate all the way to failure and having to completely rebuild it. We also, as we look at that, we don't look at saying, well, okay, we've got 1 or 2 streets in this neighborhood that really fit the kind of bottom of that range. The others are a little bit higher, but they're kind of close to it. We're just going to do the 1 or 2 here, then we're going to move to another area of the city and do 1 or 2 there. That doesn't work very well for a couple of reasons. It looks spotty. You have some residents then in the same neighborhood say, hey, you fixed my neighbor's street, but you didn't fix mine. But then the other issue is the more you jump around, the more it tends to cost you. Contractors like to be able to go into an area, complete. The more work you can concentrate in one spot, the better bid prices you generally get. So we look for neighborhoods where we have a bunch of streets that kind of fit that. Some of them may be a little higher, some of them may be a little lower, but we try to target an area where we can go in and finish out that entire area all at once to take advantages of that. And on the rehab reconstruction category, we look for those that have the lower PCI scores, the worst of the worst, so to speak. We also try to take into consideration development activity, where development's going or where we see new development occurring or where we already have development. That sometimes causes our streets to fail more rapidly. We have some parts of our community where the road or street functioned perfectly fine until these big developments came in and they started seeing a bunch more traffic. So we try to address those as we put together this list. We also are cognizant of complaints from our citizens. We do factor that into the selection process as well. For the additional capacity section that we're going to talk about, that's predominantly development driven. A lot of it is where are we seeing development activity, where do we need additional capacity to be able to handle that additional development. It also provides us with some opportunities for partnering with developers to where we don't have to burden or shoulder the entire burden of building that additional capacity. We can get a bigger bang for our buck, so to speak. And we also have areas in our community, just because of general growth in our area, where we've got congestion. Those are the hot areas where we get a lot of complaints, a lot of driver frustration. There's where we try to focus in terms of that additional capacity. The CIP process is not necessarily a fast one. And it can get complicated pretty quickly as other factors come into play and work their way into it. The first step is to try to identify some projects. Take that objective view and try to put together a list. Get something stuck on the wall, you've got to look at it, review it, you can discuss it, you can change it, you can add to it, take things away, but it gets the process going. That's kind of where we're at tonight. From there, then we start refining things. We start doing more detailed estimates. How much are these projects really going to cost? How much funding do we have available year by year? And then we start saying, okay, this is what we can do with this much funding this year. Here's what we could do the following year, and so on. So then we start really fleshing out what can be really accomplished in the next 5 years or the next 10 years. As we start putting together that list and defining more of those items, that's when we can actually put things into a spreadsheet, something you can look at, something that can be displayed or put on the website. Along with that is typically a summary of the project, so people know what the project's for. Why is this project so expensive? You look at the description, oh, there's a lot of work involved there. There's storm drainage, there's completely rebuilding the road, right-of-way acquisition, all of those things to make a complete project. With the advent of newer technology, particularly GIS, when I first started in this, we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today. It's amazing what we can do now. But a lot of these projects are mapped now. They show up, they're easy for people to find, easy for them to understand where we're working, where we're planning to work. This is an example of a CIP spreadsheet from a community. And you can see that for some of these projects, the entire funding amount isn't necessarily in one year. It's spread out over time. That's common a lot of times, particularly with some of these more costly or more complicated projects. There's another example. You can see one of the columns is the project description, and some of them are pretty big because there's a lot of work going on to describe it. We've got to identify the projects first. So as I start to go through these next slides, they're broken down into 3 different categories. We have our pavement preservation, which is the new surface, the rehab reconstruct, for those bad roads that we need to really rebuild, and then the added capacity projects. That's where we're at tonight. We want to get this out to you, get some feedback from you, and then we'll use that feedback and we'll start estimating costs and start putting together a more refined list that we can then later bring back to you and say, here's what we've come up with, yay or nay. Or do we need to go back to the drawing board? This is the pavement preservation list. And we tried to put these in order of priority from this objective kind of view. The top of this list is updating our PCI study. The data we have is close to 4 years old. We need to update it. Something that was planned, we need to move forward with that. The next few items on the list represent what we presented at the pre-budget workshop, our initial attempt at if we had more money or our next chip seal or overlay project, where would we go next? And then as we go down the list there, we took that a step further. Where would we go after we did those? Where do we have these other streets or these other neighborhoods where we could go do a whole neighborhood that are in that PCI range? And a bunch of these, most of these on the list represent like a chip seal or slurry seal on the surface. Down at the bottom, not saying they're not important, but they're overlays. They're a little more costly. Both an overlay and the chip seal, and when I say chip seal, I don't just necessarily mean it has to be a chip seal. It's chip seal, slurry seal, HA5, fog seal, those kinds of things. It's a thinner surface application than an overlay, but it's the same type of concept. You're not rebuilding the entire street. You're just adding something to the existing street that's there for the most part. But your overlays, you reserve those for higher volume roadways, particularly where you have a lot of turning movements and things, because the chip seal just doesn't last. You don't get the full life expectancy out of it. You need something more substantial. But it's the same mechanism or same philosophy. We're talking about preservation, preserving our streets. The rehabilitation reconstruction list. This is where the dollars really start adding up in a hurry, because reconstruction is always much more expensive than preservation. At the top of this list are 2 items, the first 2 items. The Lindbergh reconstruction is actually a section we were going to try to originally accomplish with the construction project that we're getting ready to go out to bid for. We had to pull it from that project because of a drainage issue that was discovered during design. We're still trying to figure out how we're going to address that. But we have a plan to try to work with the consultant to get a plan identified, so we want to complete that as quickly as possible because it was a priority in our earlier project. the segment of Cherry Tree up in the North Cliff area. It was an area that represents the last piece of the neighborhood where the water mains were replaced, that I don't know why it wasn't included in our first list of streets that we put together when we went out to construction. It wasn't until very late in design. It was, hey, we missed a section. We couldn't really easily add it, so we had to defer it to our next project. And then we start going down the list of streets that we presented at the pre-budget workshop. Now we get down a little below the middle of the page, Door Lane, Lookout Road, Wiederstein Road, west of Schertz Parkway. Wiederstein Road, west of Schertz Parkway is a very low PCI street, and it needs some attention. The other sections of Wiederstein are in pretty good shape. Door Lane and Lookout Road. You may drive down there and say, well, those aren't in too bad for the most part. Some areas are kind of rough. Why can't we just do an overlay or something on those to get a new surface and smooth them out? If you look a little closer, unfortunately, particularly on Door Lane around where the crane operation is, the structure's starting to fail. We know we have development that's coming in that wants to add more industrial uses. It's going to take access off of Door Lane, north of where the existing enterprise in that area, we call it Titan North or Royal Manufacturing, behind the actual Royal Manufacturing facility in between the two railroad tracks. With them pumping a lot more truck traffic down Door Lane, we need more structure. So this is kind of an attempt to say, let's try to get a little bit ahead of the game here. Let's try to make that investment before we suddenly get slammed with all that extra traffic. The same thing with Lookout Road. That's another key route for that. Added capacity. This is largely development driven. Now, some of these on this list are really need to kind of be packaged together. The first two, for example, almost need to be done at the same time. This, we're talking about an area behind the, behind the FedEx facility on the east side of 3009. There's a lot of vacant land there. They want to do something similar to Titan North, same type of thing. It breaks our transportation system trying to send all that traffic to 3009. It's already congested. We've got to get some additional routes, some additional capacity somewhere else to be able to spread that traffic load. That's why they're high on the list. These all represent projects that are in our master thoroughfare plan. So they are eligible to go after MPO funding. So that's another potential funding source that we could utilize so we don't have to bear the entire burden. As development comes in, we make them pay their fair share as well. That's kind of the end of our list, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have or further explain how we came up with this preliminary list.
Very good. Thank you, sir. So first and foremost, for anybody that might be watching this video later or is here present, if you go to the city's website and go to the search function and type in spam, it takes you directly to a set of results. The first result takes you directly to the portion of the website that has all this information on it. I assume that we'll continue to populate that with more and more information as we continue to move forward.
Yes, sir.
So it's easy to find. Spam. I can't get over that yet. I'm still working on it. I do find a great deal of humor in it on about 5 different levels. Questions? Start with Mr. Edwards.
I have one question. Can you go back one slide? I noticed that you put the 3009 crossing design. Are you talking just the railroad design crossing, that area, because it continues to fail? Oh, the overpass, that's what I was wondering. But that one area also where you make the right turn, it continues to fail over and over. Mm-hmm. Is that going to be addressed eventually?
Yes.
You can lose a rim there if you drive through there quick enough.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You should try it out on a motorcycle.
Just to add on to what you were saying, that comes up repeatedly at all of our TSAC meetings as well, that that intersection there, and we've gone to TxDOT with it. They occasionally come out and do a little bit of a repair, but that work right there is TxDOT's responsibility, and I believe it's the Seguin Maintenance Office, so we'll continue to hound them about that one.
Thank you, guys.
Dr. Scagliola?
You did a really good presentation. Thank you so very much. This is a classic knapsack analysis. There's always way more that you want to take with you than you have the capacity to carry. And, the big driver in this is money. So when you presented these streets, are they in a rack and stack order or alphabetical order or cost or need?
Mainly need.
Okay. We've had problems in the past where we've had our top three candidates for improvement. It doesn't matter if it was roads or drainage or things like that. But when it got down to putting out the requests, there was only a number or enough money for 1 and 2. So number 3, oh well, maybe we'll have to wait for another day. Whereas you could have actually gotten maybe 1 and 2, and then 6 and 7 that were on the list for the amount of money given. So what kind of rationale are we using so we can get the best bang for the buck and get these things off our list as quickly as possible with the resources?
We'll be using quite a wide variety, but that's one of the exercises that we will actually do as we start developing more. I don't have cost estimates on all these items. I can give you some real rough orders of magnitude tonight. The next step would be to start developing those cost estimates. And then that's when we start looking at our funding, and then that's going to change this listing. And the goal would be to fully utilize our funding, utilize it as best as we can. Now, some of them, we may not get to construction in this year, but maybe we have enough money to start doing the design, get it ready. This list in particular, the added capacity list, if council's direction is, yes, let's go after whatever MPO funding and other funding that's out there to help pay for this, then it doesn't happen overnight. We can't get to construction real quick. There's a lot of groundwork we need to do and other stuff. So, some of those may have to drop down the list a little bit to get through that process to get the funding. So, yes, we will be looking at all of those things as we refine this list and adjust the priority.
Couple of other thoughts. One is we actually pay a road tax to the county. Does the county provide any kind of funding for us to repair any of these roads at all?
To the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay. And just to plant the seed, I'm still very interested in sidewalks. I know it's not wrapped up in this pavement thing because it's concrete, not pavement. However, it's still on my radar.
That's understandable. When we talk about reconstructing these roads, we're not just looking at just the pavement. There's added capacity. We're looking to build the section that's identified in our master thoroughfare plan. It does include curbs, gutters, sidewalks, multi-use pathways, the whole gambit. It's not just the street. It
Okay.
includes the multimodal stuff as well.
All right, excellent. As I said, thank you so very much for the presentation. I think you're on the right track. Mr. James.
So, Councilman, on your last question, we'll sort of jump in and chime up. So again, as John kind of mentioned, we've talked about the roadway capital improvements program, but we would have a water, a sewer, a drainage, a sidewalk, maybe even a park as well. So you have these series of capital improvements programs. As John talked about, we did the pavement condition index to help us understand the shape of the roads. So Doug and Jimmy have a proposal to do a simplified version of that for sidewalks. It's really a 4-scale system as opposed to a 1 to 100. Are there sidewalks? Are they really bad, kind of bad, pretty good? And do that. So that's something we're planning to take on, and then that would form the basis of what you're asking about, which is now when can y'all come back with this sidewalk CIP, and we can see how we want to prioritize those.
Yeah, what concerns me is a lot of times, unless you're doing these projects simultaneously, you're duplicating your own efforts. If you come in and take care of the street, and then a year later, you're working on the sidewalks. Well, yeah, as far as efficiencies go, so where's the money coming from for these all of these things that theoretically should work simultaneously?
So you're right, they should in theory, and the key is communication and coordination. Because as John kind of mentioned, what you don't want to do is go out and repave the street because you got one group of folks looking at streets, and then a week later, the group of folks at the city. And the good news we have is we don't have separate groups. It's kind of all the same group, as I assume our staffing study will kind of show. So we tend not to have as many of those problems. But as we get bigger, that'll be more and more of an issue. So you don't want then the water group coming in, ripping up the street to do a water project. So that's important. Here's what I will say, and I expect city manager will say this as well. Part of what we started a number of years ago is talking about what's our sustainable program or putting money into maintenance. And a big part of that last year was going up on the tax rate so we can start funding things. And so that's part of what we'll continue to have conversations about the budget retreat, which is, once we know what we've got with regard to sidewalks, we can sort of see the order of magnitude, then we just have to build it into our budget. Much as we've built in the vehicle replacement program, and now it's in there, it's kind of locked in, and it'll take us a while. We'll have to make decisions. I wish I could put 100,000 in. Well, we don't because we need to do this, so we'll start with 75. And then we'll grow it over time. And then hopefully, again, we can minimize the amount we're relying on bonding, so we're not paying that interest, and we have that consistent amount every single year, so we're not dealing with these peaks and valleys of workload. So it's not going to happen overnight, but what we talk a lot about is let's start chipping away at it. Let's be able to make progress that we can see, that our residents can see, that they can look at these CIPs and go, okay, there is a plan. I'm not sure quite when they'll get to mine, but they're working off something.
Yeah, I think that's important, is the perspective, the time perspective. So you're talking about a long-range perspective with all of these plans. It's not a 1 year or 2 year. Even a 5-year plan is, as John said, is a rolling plan. So as projects come off, others come back on. So I think the main thing is to understand the need first, be able to prioritize that in some logical fashion, and then we apply the funds as we get them.
Council, other questions? Chipping away, is that a surface joke? Was it? Oh, shrubbery. So we're going to move back toward Monty Python. All right, if nothing else, then thank you. Please continue to keep us updated. Let us know as we move forward and populating that spot on our website, because I know that many people will rely on that. The retooling of the website has made it easy to navigate. The fact that I can sit here and on my phone as an older person now get to it very easily without my children's help. It's working. Thank you all. Appreciate it. All right, next up, we do have need for a closed session this evening. City Council will meet in closed session under Section 551.071 to seek advice of its attorney on legal matters. Section 551.072 for deliberations regarding real estate, to wit, discuss all groundwater leases executed by the Cibolo Valley Local Government Corporation for groundwater in Wilson County, Texas. Before I do recess our open session and move us to closed session, our attorney this evening is Mrs. Santee. You may see that part of the nameplate we've used. It's safe to assume that you are somehow related to Dan, and would that be by affinity or consanguinity? Affinity. All right, there we go. That said, welcome. Glad to have you with us this evening. And we will recess our open session and come back from closed session as soon as we're able. We have 7:38. We are back in our open session. Item 7A, take any action based on discussions held in the closed session. Under agenda item 7, we have no actions to take this evening, so I'll move directly to the next portion of the agenda, announcements of the city manager. Anything further, Dr. Brown?
I just had one announcement, and that was the fire department did a great job with their fire academy for their middle school and high schoolers. We had an opportunity to attend their graduation. They had pizza for, it was a full house over there in the fire bay with, I guess, 20-plus middle schoolers and 15-plus high schoolers and all the parents. So I think they all had a great time, and I think it was a really, really, really great effort by the fire department, so I give kudos to them for that. And this week we have Police Academy coming up, by the way.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
For next week.
Oh, go ahead. Anything else? Next, request by the mayor and council members that items be placed on a future city council agenda. Anything we need to add that we don't currently have scheduled? Doesn't look like I have any takers. We'll move to announcements of the mayor and council members. We'll start with Mayor Pro Tem Hayward.
Okay, Mayor, I think since it's summertime, things are slowing down. But I had the opportunity to sit in for you at the JBSA P4 meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for allowing the opportunity. And the one thing that I can say is that they were able to get a grant to do a new J-Luce. And they said it'll take 2 years, and they're going to include all bases, not just the 3 main, but the other secondary bases. And it should take 2 years. That way, as developers come in, they can make sure that they are not encroaching upon their missions. And I think that's a good thing, because we wouldn't want to see that go away. I did attend the newly elected workshop at ACOG. I like that one a little bit better because it got into the weeds of things, but then with duties and responsibilities for council and mayor. The other thing that I learned from them was some of the new laws that were passed by our wonderful legislature is going to inhibit some things that cities can do, as well as one of the things, and they're still looking into it, is how the city manager will communicate with city council. And apparently something with blind carbon copying could be possibly a quorum, but they're looking into how that's going to work out. And then I attended the movie at the park, Aquaman at Pickerel Park. The kiddos were playing in the water, having a good time on that very balmy evening. It was a nice turnout, and that is all.
Fantastic. Mr. Davis?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Gutierrez?
Yeah, I also went to the ACOG newly elected for a refresher. Pretty interesting. You always pick up some stuff that you overlooked. And also attended the movie in the park, Aquaman. Thanks to Parks and Recreation for putting that together. That's it.
Good. Mr. Edwards?
Nothing, sir.
Dr. Scagliola?
Nothing.
Mr. Brown?
Nothing.
All right, since you guys brought up the movie in the park, I still think the best one ever from Parks and Recreation Department was showing Jaws while folks were in the pool. Full points on that one. If nothing else from City Council or from staff, then we stand adjourned.